Good evening and welcome to this candidate forum hosted by the Helena Democratic Socialists of America. I'm Julie Cruz. I'm the Helena DSA Communications Coordinator, and I'd like to acknowledge our partners in this forum: the Helena Progressive Action Network, the Helena Service for Peace and Justice, Montana Poor People's Campaign, Montana Women Vote, Plymouth Congregational Church, Resilient Helena, and St. Peter's Episcopal Cathedral. Thanks very much to these partners. Helena will elect a mayor and 2 city commissioners in this nonpartisan election. Election day is November 2nd, but ballots were mailed to all registered voters yesterday. It is important to return these ballots as soon as possible. I'd like to briefly explain the process for tonight's forum. First, let me recommend that all participants and attendees place their view in Zoom on gallery view. Second, if you would like to use the captioning service, please click on the live transcript button, usually at the bottom of your screen, also known by a CC icon, and select from the little drop-down menu, Show Subtitle. Third, we will be gathering questions from our Zoom participants for the final segment of the forum. We ask that you enter your questions into the chat in Zoom. Questions are the only activity that will take place in the chat. Please choose one candidate to whom you would like to pose a question. Type that name into the chat, followed by typing your question. I will be gathering these questions and posing them to the candidates for you. I will do my best to pose all the questions in the chat, and you may enter questions at any time during the forum. The forum will begin with a question that has been provided in advance to all the candidates. This will be followed by a set of 7 questions that the candidates have not seen in advance. Most of these will be posed to only 2 candidates, and then at the end of that section of the forum, candidates will have an opportunity to weigh in on any of the questions that were not posed to them. We will then ask a final question to all candidates as provided in advance, followed by your questions from the Zoom chat. After 20 minutes of audience questions, we will conclude the forum. We invited all the candidates for Helena Mayor and Helena City Commission. Tonight, Wilmot Collins, Eric Feaver, Sonda Gaub, and Melinda Reed are here to respond to our questions. We have 2 moderators this evening, Frank Kromkowski and Ella Smith. We also have a timekeeper who will hold up signs when 30 seconds remain, 20, 10 seconds remain in a timed response. When the stop sign appears, the moderators will interrupt and conclude that response. Thank you again for attending tonight, and without further delay, let's get started. Frank?
Thank you very much, Julie. My name is Frank Kromkowski, one of the moderators for tonight's session. Our first section will be an introduction of each candidate. And this first question has been provided to the candidates in advance, and each will have 2 minutes to respond. The question is, please briefly introduce yourself and tell us your ideas about the value of democratic government. Include your views on the city's role in ensuring a healthy, safe, and thriving community for all residents of Helena. Include a specific example that you, if elected, will work to accomplish. And the order of our candidates speaking and answering this question will be Eric, Wilmot, Sonda, and Melinda. So Eric, if you would start.
Well, thank you, Frank, for the having me first, and thank you to the DSA and all the other partners in this forum. I'm grateful. I'm Eric Feaver. I'm a candidate for the City Commission. I've lived in Helena 47 years. I have 2 children, one who still lives here in town. She has 4 children. And she is also a hospitalist at St. Pete's. A shout out to St. Pete's. They're doing incredible work for this community. I taught in Helena schools for 10 years, and then I was basically a union leader for almost 40. And I ended up with the Montana Federation of Public Employees being the capstone of my career. That is the merger of 3 unions. They talk about that more as we move through the time. I definitely believe democracy is the form of government that we should all be working very hard to acquire. I don't know that we've quite gotten there. I'm a little worried about it nationally speaking. I'd like to think, though, democracy still works in Helena. I am running for office, as are the other candidates, and I suspect if one of us or 2 of us lose, we are not going to challenge the results of the election. I think we will believe that our electoral process actually works here in town. I think as a commissioner, one of my priorities in the democratic sort of way is to see how we can expand housing opportunities to rent or to own here in the city, and also to provide shelter, food, and medical care for our homeless. If we don't do that, then we have failed as a city. The Helena Affordable Housing Trust Fund is an agenda that I will push hard, and I think the other commissioners will as well, because it was one of the bright things that the current commission has done. We need to promote that and move forward.
Thank you, Eric. And Wilmot, will you go second, please?
Yes. My name is Wilmot Collins, and I'm the present mayor. I've been mayor for the last almost 4 years. I'm married and with 2 children, Bliss and Jamie. Bliss resides in Seattle, Washington, and Jamie is with the Navy in the UK. My wife, Maddie, is with the Army in El Paso, Texas. Presently, I also work as a child protection specialist with the Department of Health and Human Services. And prior to that, I was with the VA as administrative officer for the facility, and Homeland Security as immigration service officer. And I'm running for re-election to continue serving as your mayor of this remarkable city and community. Let me say that I fully believe in the values and principles of a free and fair society by the way of a democratic government. I know what it is when democracy breaks down. I have firsthand knowledge of it, of when democracy breaks down. We do not want it here in our community. As a form of government closest to the people, that's the form of government. We have an open government in Helena. As a form of government closest to the people, I believe the city is in the driver's seat to ensure a healthy, safe, and thriving Helena. I'm confident under my leadership, we will achieve that. I will continue to stress the need to get vaccinated. When we talk about safe community, that's what we need. Even the governor today sent out a message to state employees, strongly encouraging them to get vaccinated. I'll continue with that as an example of how to keep a community safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Wilmot. And Sonda, will you be our third responder?
Okay, yeah, my name is Sonda Gaub. I am running for mayor. I was born here in Helena 50 years ago. I've moved over 30 times with my parents, and in college at MSU, and with my husband in the military. We purchased our home here in 2007 as a retirement home out of the military. We did not retire until 3 years ago. So we've been back in Montana, and it's good to be back home. I will tell you that. We raised 2 beautiful children in the military. We crisscrossed the US through many deployments. We're having a hard time dealing with what has happened in Afghanistan because we spent 20 years supporting that country as a family and away from our home. And so we are dealing with that as a family right now. I'm running for mayor because in our city code, the mayor is supposed to be the communicator. It's supposed to communicate between the city and the commission. The mayor should be helping the commission reach equal decisions and solutions. There should be open discussions. There should be answers provided. As mayor, I want to bring back discussions from the public. If we use Robert Rules of Order, we will be able to do that again, because we have great people in our city that can give us so much knowledge that we can make correct solutions for Helena instead of looking for solutions outside of Helena. So I think we have, being the light of the light city of Montana, we really need to gather all that information and knowledge from our citizens. And so that's what I would like to do as mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonda. And Melinda, would you please answer that same question?
Yes. Thank you to everyone who's hosted this forum tonight. My name is Melinda Reed. I am also running for Helena City Commission. I chose Helena as my home in 2013. I currently work for DPHHS on opioid overdose prevention work, and I am the proud mother of a 9-year-old boy. I am the former executive director of the Friendship Center and served as the interim city manager during the pandemic. And I am running because I love this city, and I want to use the experience I've gained here to help move Helena forward during what is clearly a time of change. And with regard to the value of democratic government, I think the value of that type of government is that it is representative government that reflects our community. I think it's really important in a democratic government to have diverse perspectives, to be accountable to the whole community, and to be accessible to the whole community. I think the role of the city in creating a healthy, thriving community is to ensure high quality city services for all residents, and that includes public safety and basic services like water and sidewalks and roads. I think the city needs to work to incentivize the development of affordable housing in our community. And I think the city must be a good partner to local businesses who are seeking to either expand or invest in our community. As an example of what I would do if I was elected, I would work with housing advocates, nonprofits, developers, and other interested parties to develop affordable housing in our city, and ideally issue an RFP involving the Housing Trust Fund that has been established by the current commission. I think it's an incredible resource we have, and I would work very hard to make sure it was used effectively and efficiently. Thank you.
Thank you, Melinda. I'd like to thank all 4 of our candidates for answering that first question. And now I'm going to turn over the moderatorship to Ella Smith.
Thank you so much, Frank. Thank you everyone who's attending this evening, and to the Helena DSA for all your tireless work in preparing for tonight. The next 7 questions have not been provided in advance to the candidates. I will be repeating the gist of the question every time I call another person, so don't madly scribble as I'm asking the question. I'll repeat it for you. And you will have 90 seconds to respond, and I will lightly cut you off after 90 seconds if need be. So thank you all so much. This next question will be posed to all 4 candidates, and I will start with Wilmot, go to Sonda, followed by Melinda, and then Eric at the end. So sorry, I scrolled a little bit too far there. Your first question from me this evening: issues of housing in Helena range from dealing with ballooning costs of rent and home ownership to safe shelter for our unhoused residents. How does the city's Housing Trust Fund address these issues? And how would a program like the proposed Helena Outdoor Temporary Shelter and Services, or HOSTS program, benefit the community? Wilmot?
Thank you, Ella. Sorry. Thank you. We at the commission, we saw the need for affordable housing in our community because we saw the prices of rent, we saw the prices of housing go through the roof. We needed to do something. So we established the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, but we need to go one step further. In order to help to make things affordable, we may have to go after what Habitat for Humanity is doing. I want us to get involved with the land trust, which will maintain that level of affordability. Because I've watched what happened at the Remington apartments. I lived in those apartments. 3-bedroom when I lived there was $1,300. Today, 2-bedroom was $930. Whoa. $930, it's gone up to $1,850. So it's very important, but we are on the right track. We need to keep it affordable by creating land trust that will maintain that level of affordability. So yeah, I think we need about 2 minutes for these questions, by the way. Thank you.
The 90 seconds will tick by quickly, and I apologize for the clunkiness as we all get used to it. So Sonda, how does the Housing Trust Fund address issues of housing in Helena, and how would a program like the HOST program benefit the community?
Well, the housing in Helena is very frustrating on all parts. It's very frustrating for the people that are looking for their first home because they're unable to buy it. So, it's one of those things that we have to wait out when we're for those things. And so as far as the land trust and the housing, from what I understand is that we have hotel tickets for some of those that are homeless right at the moment. Things that we also need to address when we start looking at shelters is when you start bringing in shelters, your crime will go up. It happened in Colorado Springs. Once they expanded their shelter, they maxed it out. And within a year, they built a second shelter and a third shelter. So there was a triangle between those shelters. As an educator, we watched the children just get shuffled between shelters because you only had a month within those shelters. So I think working with nonprofits to help them with this housing trust fund that has been created will help the nonprofits create permanent housing instead of the 30-day housing. And so these kids were constantly going through different school systems, and some kids we saw 3 times within a year. So there's things that we have to talk about. It's not just housing. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonda. Melinda, do you want me to repeat the question?
Could you just repeat the second half? You referred to it as the HOST program, but I think I missed the full
I'll give you
explanation
the
of it.
acronym.
Thank you.
It's a proposed program, the Helena Outdoor Temporary Shelter and Services Program.
Great, thank you. I think I'm good with that. I think the Housing Trust Fund provides an awesome opportunity for the city to use bridge funding to leverage grants. I think it could offset some of the costs of building within our city. I think in a general sense, the Housing Trust Fund shows the commitment of the city to addressing the housing issue. And I think there's some phenomenal people in this community who have a vast knowledge of housing issues, who have really great ideas of how we could use it. I think I gave a couple of small examples, but there's lots of people with great ideas about how those funds could be used effectively. And with regard to the HOST program, knowing not very much about the details, I think assuming that the city provided a shelter program, I think it would help address the cycle of moving our unhoused population from one place to another over and over and over again. And would allow for more of a sustainable approach to providing a place with dignity for people to go when they are homeless. As an example, I think when we think about our homeless population and what challenges they must face trying to find a place to use a restroom on a day-to-day basis, I think there is a fundamental lack of dignity in that. And I think if we are able to look at that situation and provide a place where people know they could go, I think that's going to make a really big difference. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Eric, would you like the question one more time?
No, I think I've got a question. It's a tough question. And on the doors, I've had a number of people challenge my assertion that we can do anything about our housing issue and our homeless. And I'm somewhat discouraged by the, if you will, the attitude that it's just not doable. Well, it is doable. And I think the city is taking leadership with its Helena Affordable Housing Trust Fund, what I understand to be a revolving fund that will help us work with public and private sector partners, nonprofits, whatever it takes to make it possible for folks to move into our community and stay here. So it's not just folks who are homeless. Obviously, that is a priority we must address. Maybe we can address that with funds from the federal government, depending on what happens in this Congress. But in terms of just having an opportunity for people who work here to live here, I think is an obligation for any city, and we should do that. In terms of the host program, this is the first I've actually heard of it, but I know that some other cities have tried it. I didn't know that Helena was thinking about doing that. I think clearly we should try what works. I don't know how it's worked in other places. And so I would like to explore that, at least as a commissioner, I would want to know how effective that's been. But I agree with Melinda that we shouldn't be moving people around from place to place. And I think Sonda said something to that effect too. We should find some sort of permanency in how somebody can be, if you will, sheltered, fed, and medically cared for during their homeless nature.
Thank you to all of you, and my apologies to anyone who caught that. I believe it's the HOTS program, HOTSS. That is absolutely my bad, folks, and maybe you would have known what the heck it was if I had pronounced it correctly. So, you know, we all get one strike, I guess. So our next question is about childcare. And this question is only going to be posed to two of you, but I just want to reiterate that if you are unhappy with a question that was not posed to you, there is an opportunity for you to respond to questions that weren't posed to you at the end. So feel free to file that away. Thanks so much. So this next question I am going to pose to Sonda first and then to Eric. You'll each have up to 90 seconds to respond. And if you are over time, I will subtly ask you to wrap it up. So this next question is, workers in our community, particularly women, are finding it difficult to both work for a living and be a parent of young children, particularly school-age children, in part due to the lack of safe, affordable childcare. What policies and leadership can the City of Helena provide to care for our community's children? And I'd like to start with Sonda.
She's muted.
Well, that's because I was trying to put my pin in the lid. So anyway, so childcare, you know what, that's a hard issue and it's individualistic. We're a community, and I think communities can come together and help you solve those problems. We have such great nonprofits, and so many churches now, half their buildings are a daycare. That's a frustrating thing that single moms have to deal with. I tutor one, and finding, because even right now, Thursday and Friday, the kids are not in school. So what do you do with those 2 days when you don't have those? It becomes very interesting for those families. There's a lot of home care, kind of like a babysitting club. Some people choose, you take mine this week, I'll take yours next week. We have so many options and we have great ideas. You know, I don't know how I don't have a permanent solution for that, and whether or not the city is one of those things that can provide that. I think employers, if they really want to keep an employee, should help those employees out. And since we've been doing remotes, I think that's even better. So anyway, interesting question, hard, but thanks.
Thank you so much, Sonda. Eric, what policies and leadership can the City of Helena provide to care for our community's children?
I think the city of Helena should go to the next legislature and lobby hard for pre-K, public school pre-K, universal pre-K for ages 3 and 4. That's been a long time agenda of the union that I represented. In fact, the union I represented was in large part responsible for first half-time kindergarten back in 1991, and then full-time kindergarten in 2007. Those were tough battles, but we fought them and we stayed the course. We didn't let go when times got tough, and they were tough, and now they're tough. If we were able to do pre-K in our public schools, ages 3 and 4, we would help solve a lot of the issues that people face right now with childcare. If the Build Back Better program actually passes Congress, we may have that solved for us. We will wait and see. I'm not banking on that. I'm banking on our ability to go to the legislature and wrestle with the demons of those that think that public school for kids 3 and 4 is not what they want to do. It can be done. We should be doing it. I hope the city will lobby in that respect.
Thank you so much. I pronounced every word in that question correctly. Our next question will be posed to Wilmot and Melinda and is focused on COVID-19 response. Implementation of the Montana House Bill 121 requires identification of a government body that will adopt public health rules and regulations. Currently, we see no end to the cycle of strains and the COVID-19 pandemic in our area. How do you envision the relationship between the city and the health department as we work to control the pandemic in our community? And I'll start with you, Wilmot.
Thank you. Presently, I'm on the Lewis and Clark County Board of Health, and we've worked well together. But with elected officials, people who are not experts, being the ones to make those decisions, I sincerely feel that that was a wrong decision to make by our legislatures, because I think the professionals should be able to do those things. I can't tell doctors what to do. I mean, when it comes to medical, but with the Lewis and Clark County Board of Health, the way we have it set, we have professionals, we have medical doctors, we have elected officials, we have all of the necessary entity in one room discussing that. That's the way to go. The way our state legislature wanted, I call that power grab. That's what they wanted to do, because doing what they set out to do is wrong. It's like me trying to tell the rocket scientists how to go up to the moon. No. I believe the way we had it should have stayed that way. Thank you.
No.
Yep.
I'm frozen.
You've unfrozen. You're good. I don't think I need the question again. Shall I go ahead? Yes. Okay. I think, basically the city and the county health department should be side by side. They should be supporting each other. They should be promoting each other's messages as necessary. They should be walking right next to each other down this path. As the mayor mentioned, when this all started, I was at the city, and we worked very, very closely with the county health department, and that is exactly how it should be. It was tremendously successful. I felt like we were allies. I felt like they could come to us for help and we could go to them. We shared information. The response was well coordinated, and that is precisely how it should be. I am the parent of a child who's too young to be vaccinated, and this is not an easy time for us. It is unnerving to know that the people who have the knowledge on how to lead a response are not able to do so. And I don't believe that's how it should be. I would like the city and the health department to get back to the relationship they had. I would like us once again to refer to the experts for their knowledge in the COVID-19 response. And I think we could be doing a much better job than we currently are, given the limitations we have. Thank you.
We can hear you now, Ella.
Oh, good. Sorry for the shriek. Thank you so much for your answer to that question. I have now lost the ability to mute and unmute myself because my computer is having a little bit of a meltdown, but still running. So I'm going to remain quietly unmuted. Our next question will be posed to Melinda and Sonda, and we'll focus on clean energy. The Helena City Commission Resolution 20592 commits to powering the community with 100% clean, renewable electricity by 2030. What short-term objectives toward this goal will you work to implement in the next 2 years? And I'm going to start with Melinda.
Thank you for that question. With regard to clean energy, I think the first thing that I would want to commit to doing is to restoring the position of the sustainability coordinator to full-time. I'm sorry, that's not accurate. It was never full-time, but I believe it should be. I think that position should be a full-time position. I think the work that has been done by the person who was previously the sustainability coordinator was excellent. There has been some great work done and some reports put out that have very tangible recommendations that we need to be following. I think some of the examples of things we could be doing are increasing charging stations, ensuring that all city county buildings have solar, continuing to expand the solar network throughout the city. It has been said that it is an unrealistic goal to assume we can do it by 2030. I wholeheartedly disagree. There's no time like the present. There's been good progress made, and if the city commits itself to getting there, we will get there. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Sonda, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, I think I'm fine. Well, maybe you should. May have. Please repeat the question.
I'll give you a short version. What short-term objectives towards heading towards a clean, renewable electricity future will you work to implement in the next 2 years?
Well, I think clean and renewable, it's getting better. It was a little expensive as an individual to be able to apply it. Right now we're looking at our garage, putting solar on top of it, which I think would be really cool. But I haven't figured out what the cost is. So, I mean, we have so many city buildings, we definitely could use those roofs. I do have a problem as a scientist on those roofs, is just because of the reflection of that. And does that take an account to some of our climate change? So you're reflecting light back up into the atmosphere. So, you know, I have those weird little questions that I ask myself. Helena's great as far as clean energy because we have our water turbines out at the dams. So, you know, that is extremely helpful if we have an energy crisis. It's not like we're going to be like Eastern Montana where we're in that power grid and Texas gets our energy while we are in a blackout. So, you know, we have so many things that we can adjust as individuals. And I think if the city looked at it as an individual and looked at some of those price tags and started actually implementing some of those, that would be great. Thanks.
Thank you. Question number 6 will be posed to Eric and Melinda and is focused on policing. How can Helena support crisis response teams to assist with police departments and their role in responding to calls complicated by mental health issues? Oh, I'm starting with Eric, please.
You know, I don't know exactly what the city is doing now. in terms of crisis response teams. If the police department is involved in that, I don't know that. If there's some other entity or agency that's involved in that, I don't know that. I know the school district is interested in that, and I hope that the city and the school district are in consultation about that. I know that the SROs, I hope the school district retains and that the city continues to fund, are not a crisis response team per se, and should only be in that situation in an extreme emergency, just as a custodian or a teacher might be. So I'm not sure that I'm qualified to answer the question because I'm not sure what's going on now. But certainly it should be something that we explore, because I know that part of the conflict between SROs and the community was some perception that they were misused, that their scope of practice had eroded or not been well explained, and that there were folks that felt that the SROs were not dealing with the issue that at hand. I do know that mental health, in particular with our students in our schools, is something that we must address. That's part of what a crisis response team is all about. And I do know that whatever response team, if there is one that's developed, it must be one that deals with the population of students engaged in a very equitable and fair and professional fashion.
Thank you, Eric. Melinda? How can Helena support crisis response teams to assist with the police role in responding to calls complicated by mental health?
Thank you. It is my understanding from when I was at the city that there is a pilot CRT team in place. I don't know the status of that. It's been some time, but I think the first thing the city can do is support that pilot project, make sure they're learning everything possible from that program and how it's going, and identify, whatever resources it needs in order to be successful. I think there's some great models out there. I think the Cahoots model out of Eugene, Oregon is an excellent model that I know was discussed at the city as a possible model that would work for our community. So I think we need to continue to look to models that would work for us. We need to learn from those models. We need to do experience sharing with people who have worked on those teams and make sure that it's a good fit for us. And I think we need to work with our police department and understand what the current response structure is like. We need to support them as much as possible and identify areas where mental health professionals are appropriate for a response. There have been some communities where mental health professionals have had safety concerns, and we need to be mindful of the model and the response and what's going to work for us. And I think identifying opportunities for civilians to engage as often as possible to minimize the burden on police to deal with mental health calls that are not the best fit for them is the place to start. There's a lot of good projects out there. We need to support good models and learn from them. Thank you.
Thank you so much to both of you. I scrolled up again. Question number 7 will be posed to Sonda and Wilmot and is focused on equity and inclusion. I will preface this question by saying that I am a queer person who was born in Helena, so I am excited to be representing my community here in this role today. So thank you. So to Sonda first. LGBTQ, Black, Indigenous, people of color, and disabled folks make up an inordinately higher percentage of the unhoused and are subject to a higher rate of violence. What will you or your policies be? What will you do or what will your policies be to direct the city to ensure the safety of these members of our community, these most vulnerable members of our community? And what will you do to make sure that the voices of these people are heard? Sonda?
So for the LGBTQ community and all those other groups that you described, I wasn't able to write them all down. As I think Helena as a city has a great police program that doesn't discriminate against those groups. I had a friend who who is in one of those groups. And I really, it's hard to even address those kind of things because it's very individualistic on how you view yourself. And so for someone that struggles with that herself, it's very hard for me to answer that question per se, because all I know is that I can only control my reaction to what someone tells me. So if someone is nasty to me, do I return the nastiness or do I walk away from it and empower myself and know it's not about me, it's about them? So that's how I teach those students that are struggling with that issue. And I taught so many students with that issue. Their skin color does not control how they learn. Their disability does not control how they learn. It does not control how they react to someone. So that's how I will look at it as a citizen in this community and a citizen as a mayor.
Thank you, Sonda. Wilmot, it's a long question, so I'm going to actually read the whole thing again.
Yeah.
LGBTQ, Black, Indigenous, people of color, and disabled people make up an inordinately higher percentage of the unhoused and are subject to a higher rate of violence. What will your policies be, or what will you do to direct the city to ensure the safety of these members of our community? And what will you do to make sure the voices of these people are heard?
Thank you. What I think the city can do is, first and foremost, we've done that, but we can expand on that. We can continue to educate our police force. We can continue to educate our community, because most times we are afraid of the unknown. And because we're afraid of the unknown, we tend to react instead of act. So what the city can do is create a educational program that will enlighten our police to be able to see when these things are happening. Because sometimes, and I'm not saying the police force is intentionally doing anything negative, no, but it's better to educate for them to know when it's happening than not to. That is, and nationwide, it's been a problem. We know that. And that's when you educate your community and encourage the community, the LGBTQ, the indigenous, the African American, to report instead of staying back. They need to come out. They need to let us know what's going on. Sometimes it's difficult, but find that trusted ally, find that trusted friend, and confide in them and let them take that battle for you. So I think that's what we can do as a community and as a force.
Thank you, Wilmot. Thank you all. This is my last question for you all this evening. So, well, until the question's not posed to you portion. So I guess I lied a little bit once again. Our next and semi-final question will be posed to Eric and Wilmot, and it focuses on refugees. How can the city of Helena provide leadership in the welcoming of Afghan refugees to our community? And I'm going to start with Eric.
Well, we should welcome them with open arms and not hesitate for a moment to do everything we can to see that they're properly housed and that they are able to access the public programs and services that that our community provides and our state provides to help them with dealing with the federal government. I see that there's no limit to how we could go about embracing our refugees, such as they may be, or that might be anybody who moves to town here from a different place for a reason, like a refugee. Wilmot can speak with a great deal more authority about this than I can. I'm just saying that this community has a big enough heart and large enough arms that it can embrace refugees from Afghanistan or anywhere else in the world should they come to our place. And that would be, I think, the responsibility of the city to work with nonprofits and state and federal government to make that happen.
Thank you, Eric. Wilmot?
Yes. First, I want to say that refugees are the most vetted immigrants of all. When refugees enter this country, they've been vetted. Afghan refugees they were vetted for the last 20 years. Those that worked alongside our soldiers and our humanitarian workers, they were vetted for 20 years. So I just want to make that clear. When they come here, they've already been vetted. How can the city help? We can help by getting involved with the various refugees agencies, because we can encourage our members. I'm a product of Helena generosity. I'm a product of it. So I know we have that in us. Like Eric said, we have big hearts. We can do it. I mean, it's unlimited what we can do as a community and as a city. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So this is the section of the forum in which any candidate who would like to respond to one of the last 6 questions that was not posed to them may take 1 minute to make a statement. And I believe that you're all limited to 1. If someone could clarify that for me with a thumbs up. Great.
Well, I'd like to weigh in on the one regarding the county health department and what the last legislature did that places the issue of how we deal with medical pandemics, if you want to say it, into the hands of politicians. I think obviously the politicians can work with our county health department and hopefully come to a decision that makes sense pursuant to what the health department tells us. But as I would argue regarding pre-K, I think our city, along the League of Cities and Towns and other parties, should go back to the next legislature and say, this was a really bad idea. We need to reassert what we can do here locally to make sense for the people who live in our community, and why you're intruding upon our capacity to deliver quality health care and good advice to our citizenry. Well, really, what were you thinking? So, it's really a matter of being proactive at the next legislature through this whole election cycle, seeing what we can make out of it. I would like to believe that better minds will prevail in another legislative session. Maybe that's optimistic, but I'd like to believe that.
Thank you, Eric. Wilmot, I see your hand, and then Melinda, you are on deck.
I want to address the CRT, the crisis response team. It's no longer a pilot program. It is working. The Helena Police Department is working along with St. Peter's Hospital on a team, because I was on the end of another call when one of my clients was in crisis, and the CRT was able to go there and handle it with the police. And I got the call, and we were so I believe Helena is above the curve right now. We're doing what others are trying to do. Our police working with the professional medical and therapists and all of that to bring some sense of healing to mental health patients. So I think we're doing good. Thank you.
Thank you, Wilmot. Melinda?
Thank you. I will address the childcare question. This is an issue that I face every day and is near and dear to my heart. I think there are a lot of things the city can do, both as a city and for its employees. I'll focus on the employees piece, given the limited time. I think the city can set the tone for considering things like flexible scheduling, considering subsidies for childcare for employees. The city can also look to support transportation routes to major childcare sites. And as Mr. Feaver pointed out, advocate for universal pre-K. I think the city can set the tone and set the example for policies that do allow women and families. There are plenty of men who are heavily involved in childcare as well. And they can set the policies that can be used as an example by people across the city. This is a serious situation for many people. And I think small things that are small and yet big things like flexible scheduling and subsidies can make a tremendous difference for working families. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And Sonda, would you like to respond to any of the questions that weren't posed to you?
Yes, I do. I do want to respond. I do want to respond to the policing and the mental health crises. I did go to the Chief Hagan about the SROs because I was struggling with SROs at the moment. So I'm a researcher and a referencer, and I go and find where to find answers. And so in that meeting with him and the city manager, he said he was struggling with the mental health repeated calls. So then that next week, I found out there's a focus group for this very issue. And in that first meeting of the first focus group, the police were not utilizing the county health, mental health. And the county actually has everything in place. And so it was very interesting to hear those comments in that focus group. I haven't been able to go back to that focus group because I've been doing forums, but I think it's something that there is a focus group right now discussing this very issue. And where did that communication go wrong? And how do we readdress that and get the communication lines back open? So anyway, that's my it.
Thank you all for having me this evening. I love Helena very much, and I loved hearing from you. And I'm going to turn it back over to Frank for your capstone question.
Yes, thanks to all the panelists and to Ella for the conversation thus far. This capstone question is about leadership in government, and it has been provided to all of the candidates in advance. And it's a question that is a very difficult one for many people to handle and sometimes throw up their hands. But here's the question. Polarized politics and toxic public discourse have reduced citizen confidence in democratic government's ability to solve public issues. Provide each of you an example of how you, in a public setting, have diffused a polarized situation leading to a democratic solution that satisfied those involved. Be specific about what techniques you used to reduce conflict and increase cooperation. And so the order of answers here will be Sonda, Melinda, Eric, and then Wilmot. So Sonda, if you would begin.
I definitely agree with this question because that's the reason why I'm running for mayor, because going to commission meetings, it's you can pose a question, but you can't get an answer. You can pose a line item, but will it get discussed? It's very frustrating as a citizen to go into those meetings. I've been doing it for about a month and a half, and I really don't want to do it anymore. So I'm glad I only have 3 more weeks, but I think as a citizen, I think I'm going to continue whether I become mayor or not, because I think just by running, a lot of things have changed within this month and a half within the commission meetings. And so I think as citizens, we need to stay on top of it, even though we don't like how we're being treated or whether or not our voice is being heard. As a leader, I want to bring back Robert's Rules of Order so we can have discussions. We're going to have a lot of, if Eric gets in, we're going to have to put a timer on him. And if Troy gets in, we're going to have to put a time on him because we'll have lots of stories. And so, you know, those are leadership issues that a mayor has to address with certain personalities. A mayor also needs to, I think the mayor needs to be nonpartisan. It needs to help those commissioners bring their ideas and solutions to where they all 4 agree. And if they don't all 4 agree, we need to come up with solutions to where we can agree. And if they can't agree, then we need to take it to the public with the survey. I don't think the mayor should be the sole vote. And I think the public we need to make certain answers. How we're going to do that, I'm not quite sure, but that's what I want to do. And I want to utilize everything Helena has to offer to bring solutions to the problems that we are facing right now. Thanks.
Okay, I'd like to, for the sake of our listening audience and everyone, again, I'd like to read that question again. Polarized politics and toxic public discourse have reduced citizen confidence in democratic government's ability to solve public issues. Provide an example of how you, how you, as a candidate in a public setting, diffused a polarized situation.
You're muted, Frank. You are muted.
You went on mute just about when you said describe when you have diffused it.
I'm sorry, I think I'm back.
Yep,
I'm
we lost
unmuted
you
here.
at diffused a situation.
Okay. Provide an example of how you, in a public setting, diffused a polarized situation, leading to a democratic solution that satisfied those involved. Be specific about what techniques you used to reduce conflict and increase cooperation. And Melinda, you're next.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, I had a struggle with my mute button. I was trained in conflict mitigation, specifically the Getting to Yes methodology, and spent several years working in Central Asia on conflict mitigation projects. We hosted hundreds of community meetings where we brought together different ethnic groups and different communities who had been at odds with each other in order to identify communal infrastructure projects to implement. And we used a great number of consensus building techniques. And there were, ranging from active participatory methodology to simple consensus building. And we found that, generally speaking, when we are able to give people meaningful opportunities for engagement, as opposed to unstructured time to vent, the toxic discourse was dramatically reduced. I think that it is also important as a leader to set a positive tone and to allow people to have opportunities for engagement where they feel as if their voices are truly being heard and that their recommendations are being taken. I think it is possible to have discourse that is civil. I think there will certainly be moments where people are not willing to engage constructively, and those need to be handled, on a case-by-case basis. But I think, having worked extensively on conflict resolution, I feel confident that I have the skills to facilitate meaningful engagement, to build consensus around difficult issues, and to set a tone that is respectful and meaningful and allows the community to feel engaged in a positive way. Thank you.
Thank you, Melinda. Eric, your turn.
I wrestled with this question all day long. I've spent my career in the union movement. And the whole purpose of the union movement is to put employees, whether in the public or private sector, doesn't matter, in a position where they can bargain with their employer, salary, fringe benefits, and working conditions. If you're looking for conflict, look for what unions do. And so it is that it's normal, it's standard, it's what we live with. There will be conflict. But through the 40 years that I was a leader of the union movement here in this state, we always managed to come to some sort of resolution at the end of things. And yes, there were strikes. There were a lot of strikes, frankly, and I was engaged in most of them from 1981 to 2002. And that was the last public employee strike of any consequence in this state, because we finally learned after a long, long time that that isn't maybe the way to resolve the issue at hand. Now, I don't know that any of that is partisan, because Democrats can disagree with Democrats about union issues. I can tell you that right now, and they do frequently. So, maybe a book needs to be written on this, Frank, because to basically put this into the context of partisan politics, as I said on the doors to hundreds of folks, I'm running for the city commission. I'm not running for the legislature. I'm not running for Congress. This is a nonpartisan election. That's how we do it here in the city. And so when folks come to the commission, they should not be looking as though they are Republicans or Democrats. They should be looking at the commission as a place to resolve issues in a nonpartisan sort of way. Otherwise, we are violating, if I think, the intent of the people of this community who voted to have nonpartisan elections and nonpartisan candidates. So to a degree, the question begs an answer that I don't have in a minute and a half, and I thank you for it. It'll just keep me awake for a few hours after this.
Thank you, Eric. And Wilmot, what is your response to that question?
Frank, would you repeat the first part of the question, please?
Polarized politics and toxic public discourse have reduced citizen confidence in democratic government's ability to solve issues.
Thank you. Part of the reason we are in a polarized situation as a country is because we come with an agenda. When we enter our discussions, we are looking for a certain answer. We're looking for a certain result. But as the leader, you should be going in there. You should be going in there with, you should be the example and be going there to listen and empathize. And then you speak about it. Because if you listen to what they're saying, whoever is saying, we must realize that there are certain part of our population nowadays where truth doesn't matter. So whatever you say will not ring through. We have to accept that. But we still, as the leader, you still have to listen to the people. Make sure as the leader, you have the facts on your side. Because when you go there, you will be challenged for the facts. Have the facts on your side, listen to them, and then respond with the facts. Some will listen, but be sure to because you don't agree with what the other party is saying, don't be disrespectful. Be calm, be respectful, and empathize with the other side. That's how I will go about it. I'm done.
Okay, thank you, Wilma. And now we'll turn to Julie Cruz, who has been watching questions come in from the audience, and Julie will take us into this next section of our forum.
Thank you very much, Frank, and thanks to everyone. So we'll now begin taking questions from our Zoom audience. I have a few questions that have already been entered into the chat, but if you have a question, use the chat function of Zoom, type the name of the candidate to receive the question, followed by the text of your questions. So I will begin posing questions to the candidates now. This first question is for Wilmot. And the question is, do you know how Helena is doing with helping people access the rent assistance provided through the rescue funds? Those could or should be helping people stay in their homes. Today, my daughter, who is a social worker at the hospital, signed up a family for Section 8. There are 700 families on that list ahead of them.
Well, as we've been discussing for the last several months that we do have a problem. And Helena is not immune from the problem. But when we're talking about Section 8 and the benefits, we will have to start looking at the State Benefits Office, OPA, Office of Public Assistance. We have to start addressing working with the Helena Housing Authority. So to answer your question, honestly, I'm not sure how Helena is doing when it comes to the Section 8, because we don't monitor that. We don't deal with it as a city government. But I'm aware that the list is extremely long. And it's heartbreaking to find out that you're number 701. When will you ever get there? And even when you do get the Section 8 voucher, you can't find the Section 8 housing. So it's a double-edged sword that we as a community will continue to struggle with. And I'm so sorry for what's going on. We're trying our best to see how best we can work on that issue. But the federal government and their assistance It's tough.
Thank you, Wilmot. The next question is for Sonda. And the participant asks, explain your qualifications for serving as mayor.
Had problems finding my mouse there for a second. Yeah, Wendy, my qualification as mayor is I've been a substitute teacher for 15 years. I can go into any environment, control the situation, get 36 students to align and get our day on for the rest of the day. So I'm going to apply that knowledge to the city commission. With the Roberts Rules of Order, we'll be able to actually answer people's questions. That's my biggest problem right now with the government right now. You know, it's hard to be respectful when someone's attacking you or you feel like you're being attacked. It's hard to keep your cool in those situations. I've been doing a lot of secret things since I've started running as mayor. I'm not going to point those out, but I do research things. Some I have left messages on city employees' voicemails saying, not leaving my name, but saying, I am sorry what happened in that commission meeting and that was inappropriate. So there are a lot of inappropriate things that are happening within meetings and how they treat city employees. So I think the mayor's main job is to get the vibe of the city. I need to be involved as much as possible. So that's why I just kind of jumped in. I knew exactly what I needed to do, and I had to do it fast. The mayor also needs to have the vibe of its employees. And keeping that communication between the city manager and the commission, that's part of the job. So those are my qualifications, and thanks for the question, Wendy.
Thank you, Sonda. The next question is for Eric. Could the city or county implement universal pre-K without the state legislature's help?
Not unless somebody's come up with a big bag of money.
Yeah.
Keep in mind, the whole purpose of universal pre-K is to marry it right into our public school system, just like kindergarten, first grade, fifth grade, juniors in high school. That's the state's obligation in my mind, and it should get on with it. And we've been working on it for a long time. I should say in this regard, then, I don't want anybody to think that Helena should march up to the legislature by itself and demand pre-K, which we should be a part of a partnership of folks doing that, which would include the greater education community in Montana, which wants universal pre-K. The only thing that really holds us back, frankly, is the partisan politics of things, which I guess Frank's question's about, but also how much it costs. We can show, however, that the cost to the community is greater without it than it ever would be with it. And we're talking about those costs right now with folks who can't afford to even go to work because they have to stay home with their 3- and 4-year-old. Those are the sorts of things that this city can do, working with others, collaboration with the League of Cities and Towns, collaboration with the education community in Montana. But the city does not have the capacity to do pre-K on its own.
Thank you, Eric. I now have a question for all candidates. The question is, thank you all for running for public office. Who won the 2020 presidential election? Please limit your answer to just the name of the candidate who won. I'll start with Melinda.
Joe Biden.
Wilmot.
Joseph R. Biden.
Sonda.
Biden.
And Eric.
President Biden won the election.
Thank you all very much. And then I have a question that is, I'm going to pose to all of you because we have enough time. Or I guess I would just let anyone who wishes to answer this question to raise a hand, and if no one raises a hand, I'll call on you. What is the major obstacle to installing bike lanes and crosswalks throughout the city? How can we overcome that obstacle moving forward and become a bike-friendly city like Missoula, Bozeman, or Billings? Melinda? Then Wilmot.
I believe Sonda had her hand up first, so I will defer
Oh,
to
I'm
her.
sorry. Thank you,
She
Sonda.
raised her
Then
hand.
Melinda, then Wilmot.
So the problem with bike lanes is with our hilly city, I'm not sure how Missoula has their bike lanes. But with bike lanes, you kind of need to have a circle around the city. Colorado Springs was really interesting because they were struggling with the bike lanes. And so you'd have a bike lane for like 10 blocks and then it'd end. They put a bike lane in a very busy street. A couple of bikers died on that one. So that's going to be bringing in those bikers to figure out the best route and the safest route for those bikers would be really, really nice. Instead of saying, well, it would be nice to have one on this road, taking those people that use their bikes into the town and use them regularly to figure out a circle that would be safest for our city and for our drivers, because we do have an elderly population that will not look for you. Just keep that in mind. I think the city's doing a great job of going around and making our neighborhoods safe for all ages and abilities. So keep up the good work. Thanks.
Melinda. Thank you, Sonda.
Thank you. I would say the biggest barriers right now are money and will. I had the great fortune to live in the Netherlands recently, and that is a phenomenal biking infrastructure, possibly unparalleled anywhere else. And they have committed themselves to building a biking network throughout the country. I think in Helena, one of the things we could do to get started is establish some key routes that have bike paths that are clearly marked. In an ideal scenario, you would have bike paths separated from traffic by an island. I think the width of our streets may be a prohibiting factor there, but some clear routes that would link, downtown to the capital, some of our major school networks. And once we sort of establish the culture and show that it can be done and get people used to that, it could be expanded. I think many of us now who have kids going to school will see kids riding willy-nilly down the middle of the street on their way to schools, and that's a bit unnerving. So I think it is important for us to be a bit more proactive in establishing safe bike routes throughout the city. And once we have a clear system that works and get people accustomed to it, we could expand that. Thank you.
And I'll next go to Wilmot. Thank you, Melinda.
Thank you. I think Melinda hit the nail. There are two things. I'm looking at funding and the width of our streets. What happened here is that I always tell people Helena was the city built without sidewalks. So we're trying to get sidewalks in, and that's taking up some parts and parcel of our streets. But if you notice on Lake Helena Drive, where we did implement that, we have bike lanes on Lake Helena Drive because of the width. But most of our streets are so narrow, and if we have to, we'll make what we're trying to do more dangerous if we were to put bike lanes on those narrow streets. And I would, as much as I would love bike lanes on all our streets, the affordability is, we can't afford it. We can't do it. And the streets are too narrow for some of them. And of course, we're trying to repair our streets, and we're spending a lot of money in repairing our streets, as you see where we have Rodney. We just spent $2.6 million on trying to repair the Rodney Street there. So, but yeah, streets are a problem. Bike lanes will be a problem if we try to implement that on some of our streets. Thank you.
Thank you, Wilmot. Eric, would you like to weigh in on this one, or you're not
Wait.
required?
No, I want to weigh in on this. I want sidewalks where there aren't sidewalks, and I want bike lanes where there aren't bike lanes. And, I'm waiting when we finally rebuild Custer all the way from the interstate to the fairgrounds, that we extend that bike lane that ends right there at Montana Avenue off the Wilmot. Who thought that one up? But anyway, there's a bike lane right now, right through the center of this town that runs all the way from 10 Mile Park to East Helena, but it's got some problems. One is it needs a bridge over Henderson. I don't know how much that costs, but that ought to be a priority. Two, it needs a way to cross Montana Avenue. And I know the city's looking at that, but it needs to be a very assertive way, not one where you still have to dash across the street. So we do have some issues. I think we could address some of them. There are some roads in town that are wide enough to put a bike lane down, but I would agree with Wilmot. There's a lot of roads, and Melinda said this too, where you just, the street is just really narrow. As for going up and down hills, well, that's what bicyclists do in Helena. They go up and down hills. It's a hilly town. So maybe that will restrict the number of people who want to use bike lanes, but it shouldn't prohibit us from or dissuade us from having bike lanes wherever possible.
Thank you, Eric. I have one more question, and it is for Wilmot and Sonda, but Sonda has left the forum. So Wilmot, I'll pose this to you. Thank you again for joining us tonight. With the help of several members of Helena DSA, the City Commission decided to replace the Confederate Memorial Fountain in Hill Park in 2017, and it is currently in storage. Should the City Commission affirm that it should remain in storage?
I will let me just start by saying that it was not during Mayor Collins' term that the fountain was removed. That's the first thing. I've been blamed for removing the fountain, and I was not even mayor then. So I'm just making that clear. Now, should the City Commission keep the fountain in storage? I think eventually we should be able to place the fountain in the newly built Historical Society. We could talk to the Military Museum at Fort Harrison to see if we can place it there, because it's come what may, it's part of our history, and we need to put it into context when we place it.
Thank you, Wilmot. One more question just popped up, and we do have about 2 more minutes. So this question is for Melinda and Wilmot. Do you agree with Eric that the child care cost crisis can only be solved at the state or federal level?
I don't know if Eric said the child care cost. Eric was talking about funding of the pre-K. I think that's what he said.
You are correct.
It can be solved by the state level, because it would take a boatload of money to solve the pre-K issue. So, but childcare, I think as a community, we can find solutions. I strongly believe if we come together as a community, we know what we need. And with the help from the community and bringing it to the city government, we can work. During the pandemic, what did we do? We worked with the YWCA for our employees to send their children over to the Y program and all of that. So we were instrumental in alleviating a lot of our employees' fears that they were able to go to work and work for the city. That's why the city did not lose critical services to them, because we were able to care for their kids. So I think as a community, we can do that.
And Melinda, thank you, Wilmot.
Thank you, Mayor Collins. You took the words right out of my mouth. I don't believe that Mr. Feaver said that the child care cost crisis could only be solved at the state or federal level. I think that was specifically directed to universal pre-K. With regard to what the city could do, I would agree with what Mayor Collins said. Additionally, I think there are ways to support childcare businesses in our community. There's lots of things we could look at in order to help offset some of their costs and maybe offset some of the costs that then are passed on to families. I think it is a complicated issue. I think there are things the city can do. I think working with the city employees was a great example provided by the mayor of what happened during the pandemic. And I do believe universal pre-K is a different beast altogether and is in fact best addressed at the state and federal level. Thank you.
Eric, I wouldn't mind giving you a chance to weigh in on this since we misspoke regarding your answer.
Well, I don't know that anybody misspoke. I think it's just maybe more nuanced than not. Look, if we believe in equity and we believe in standards and that we believe that everyone should have the same shot at early childhood education, we need pre-K in the state of Montana. There are folks who can afford the child care that right now they can get in town, and there are folks that can't. And so that's why I would emphasize getting pre-K. Now, I understand that's going to take a while, but it can be done. I just think we're going to have to really work hard at it. But I agree with Melinda and I agree with Wilmot that the city has a role to play in child care, but that's not education. That's not pre-K. That's not my notion of how we provide fair play for all our citizens and their small children.
Thank you very much. Well, we've come to a close of our forum, and thank you very much to the candidates for your participation this evening, and also thanks to all of our Zoom participants. This election will be held by mail-in ballot. And as I said earlier, ballots were mailed to registered voters yesterday. You may return your voted ballot by mail or in person. If mailing, you need to send it before October 26th. I would recommend, if you, like me, received your ballot today, that you send it back tomorrow. To drop your ballot off in person, you can go to the county elections office during business hours. You also can check to see that you are a registered voter, particularly if you don't receive your ballot by, say, tomorrow or Saturday, by going to My Voter page, and you may register to vote and vote at the Lewis and Clark County Elections Office in person. That's at 316 North Park Avenue, room 168. The deadline to register is 12 noon on Monday, November 1st. Again, thank you to everyone who participated. Make your plan and vote.